Hi everyone, we're going to work on our nutrient averages calculation assignment. So you've already tracked your diet for 3 days. I've already reviewed and graded your food diaries. And now you're going to use those to work on and calculate an average of each nutrient. So remember to calculate averages. In this case, we have 3 days. So we take day 1, day 2, day 3, add the nutrient amounts together, and then we divide by 3. So we're looking at nutrients of concern in this country, and I want to focus on those. Not every single nutrient that's in your food diary will be analyzed, but you still need to do some calculations in order to get the averages. I have tried to make it very simple. And in the assignment, I have provided an Excel spreadsheet. And the Excel spreadsheet will do the math for you. But of course, you have to make sure you enter the data properly and that you're using the correct data. So the first thing I would say to you is use the food diaries I have graded in Canvas. Don't go to Chronometer and use what is on the desktop version because that's a live one. And what I have noticed, students forget the 3 days they submitted because they've been tracking maybe other days on their own just to see how they're eating besides the 3 days that they submitted. And so when I go to grade this assignment, I'm using what you submitted. So I have your food diaries up and I'm looking at all the information and I'm not seeing that they're matching. So then you'll receive a 0 and you'll have to redo. And that means a lot more time and work. So if we do it right from the beginning, we don't have to redo anything. Okay, so once you open up the link, and it will be provided in the instructions, you will see the Excel spreadsheet that I've created. Some of you may say, I don't have Excel. Well, actually, every SMC student has access to Excel and all of the Microsoft Office programs. So I've included the link for Office 365, and you'll be able to log in, use your SMC email and password, and you'll have a license to Office 365. If you feel more comfortable using Google Sheets, you can feel free to do that, but the calculations and formulas you may be required to re-enter them, and that is up to you, and hopefully it's done correctly. So I encourage you to just use your free access to Microsoft Office. Okay, so you'll notice on this, I've listed all the nutrients in the first column, A. I've also used the units so that you understand each cell. Do not put units in because it won't actually calculate it in the total because, G for grams is not something that it's recognizing, so it just ignores the whole cell. So no units because the units are already here. All you're doing is putting in the numbers. So day 1, for example, you would fill in all the numbers from your food diary here. Day 2, all of them here. Day 3, and then it will total for you an average. Okay, so I have one that has already some data populated into it. So let's bring that one up. So here's an example. So you're going to put the date for day 1. Let's say it was February 5th, 2025. You'll start to gather the data from your food diary. What I'm going to do in this video is show you where those numbers are. But just so you know how this Excel spreadsheet works, let's say I made a mistake in the carbohydrate grams. I could just type right over it, right? So I could say, oh, it wasn't 150, it was 253. But you don't just type over, you have to allow Excel to recalculate. So I just use the arrow button and it should recalculate what the new number was. And now it's 710 grams and the average is 236.67. So I'm using 2 decimal places over to the hundredth. And if it has 2 decimal places over, then you would also use the same when you're answering questions about what was your carbohydrate average, and that's this column. So what it's done, it's totaled up each day and then divided by 3 because there's 3 days and calculated the average. Now, if you start hitting the delete button, you will delete formulas. So see, the formulas are up here. You don't want to do that because there's no reason for you to touch the totals column or the average column. You're only entering data for days 1, 2, and 3. There are also a couple of cells that I am doing the math for you. Doesn't mean you don't know how to do it because you learn about it in chapter 1. So let me show you those cells. So you see the ones that say percent of calories from carbs. That's an actual pretty long formula. So you don't want to touch that cell. It's already going to do the calculation for you. So once you enter in how many calories, let's say you had that day, and the grams of carbs, let's just say 236. Notice what happens. It already did the math. It said you average, or your percent of calories from carbs for day 1 was 44.95%. And you learned in chapter 1 what the AMDRs are, and that tells us how much you should be having, which is 45 to 65% of your calories should come from carbohydrates. So that math is being done for you. So you definitely don't want to hit delete buttons, or I do provide the calculations, so you would have to re-enter the calculation if you hit delete. Same with fat. Notice, let's just say you had 98 grams of fat. It's just already did the math. So it took the grams, converted to calories, and divided by your total calories for that day. There's another one down here for saturated fat. So saturated fat, let's say you had 26 grams. It already did the math. Okay? So really important not to mess with anything that already has calculations in the cell. That includes percent calories from carbs, from fat, from saturated fat, total and average columns. Okay, so really what you're doing is just filling in your data from days 1 and 2 for all of the cells that are required. So let me show you where you get the data. So this is someone's example of a food diary that was submitted. And everything was reviewed. Remember, I graded everything and made sure it's accurate. And then you have all this information down here. Now, this is the data for the day. We get to see how many calories did you eat. We get to see how many grams of protein, carbs, fat from your macros did you have. We get to see every single vitamin, mineral, fiber, sugars. We get to see everything and what percent of your goals, daily goals, did you reach. So for example, water. Water is provided in grams. This person had 3,221.5 grams of water, and that was 87% of their daily amount they reached. We want 100%, right, of all our nutrients. That's really ideal and very difficult to achieve every day, but that is the goal. And this person got 87%, so that's pretty good. Fiber, notice down here, 42.4 grams. And they actually went a little bit over. They had 112% of their daily requirement. Remember, you're trying to get 100. This person had a little over at 112. Added sugar, 7.1, there is no percent because added sugar is not a nutrient that we want you to have. So there's no daily goal. We actually say make sure you have less than 5% of your calories coming from added sugar. Fats are here, your omega-3s and 6s, saturated fat. So everything is here with a percent. So if I was using or completing my Excel spreadsheet, I would use my day one and start entering all the data from day one. Protein, we don't do amino acid amounts, but we do vitamins, some of the vitamins, and some of the minerals. So I'll tell you what the common mistakes I see in this assignment, and I'm going to remove some of these cells. Common mistakes I see is that people in the Excel spreadsheet itself enter grams. Well, the entire row will be wrong, so you don't want to enter any units. How you interpret will be a totally different assignment, so we won't talk about that right now. I just want to talk about errors that I see in the Excel spreadsheet. People don't forget to put the date. People aren't finding the calories. Again, I'll just show you that. It's found in two different places because it's highlighted in two different places. Energy is calories. So it's up here how much energy you consumed. That's how much you ate. And it's also right here. This right here, this target area is showing that you consumed 1,635, or this student, and they needed 2,228. So they were at 73% of their goal for total calories for the day. But this is the amount consumed. Protein is here, carbs, and fat. This is the most common error I see. I've asked you to enter protein, carbs, and fat in grams. And I also said, I will do the math for you on what percent of each macro, what percent of calories came from each macronutrient. That means you don't do, this is not what that means. This 38% is not 38% of your calories came from protein. That's not what this means. This means you reached 38% of your daily goal. So the math is in this area for macros is being done for you. We're not using these percentages. Most common mistake I see. Because what that tells me is that percent of calories from carbs is something that has to be calculated, and I'm doing the math for you. Okay, so don't worry and ignore these numbers for now. The other common mistake is not using decimals. When we are working with nutrients, these are tiny amounts. Remember, some of them are actually called micronutrients. So every single decimal that is given counts. We don't round. So omega-3s, for example, I've had multiple students say, oh, it was 0.7. No, it was 1. I'm going to round it to 1. 1? 1 is a lot more than 0.7 when we're talking about nutrients. So we are using and we are not rounding any of these nutrients. We're using the decimal points provided. Now, if for some reason you see this wild amount of sodium, once I saw 20,000 milligrams, that means something's wrong in the food diary. And if I see multiple issues like that, because sometimes I'm just looking up here when I'm grading, I'm seeing did they write in the right portions? Does everything make sense? Did you miss anything? You know, you had pancakes, but I didn't see any syrup. You didn't write a note. Some people write, notes when it's something is odd or different. So if I don't see any of that, I say, okay, everything looks good. But sometimes Chronometer has made errors too in the micronutrient areas. So if I notice it later on, we may need to go back and fix something or remove a nutrient from the average. So, if something like that happens, I'll let you know. That is it for the nutrient averages calculations. Hopefully you find this relatively easy to do, just filling in your numbers and your data and letting Excel do the math for you. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out. Okay, thank you.